Why, hello everybody. It's the mahogany-skinned psychedelic Bob Ross back at it again to talk to you about psychedelics. Yeah, I'm on a Washington beach. But before we can even talk about psychedelics, I need to address something going on, in my audience. There's some rumors going around. And those rumors are that I'm the son of John Legend. And I just want to say now that whoever's spreading those rumors, you're going to hear from my lawyer. Because I guarantee you, if I was the son of John Legend, I would be under a non-disclosure agreement and not be allowed to tell anybody. So let's just squash that rumor right there. I am not, what was it? I am not the son of John Legend. So let's just kill that right there. All right, moving on. What I think I want to talk about in today's video is some of the very real personality shifts that I've personally experienced on my 4 to 5 year journey experimenting with the psychedelics psilocybin mostly, and eventually LSD. And so what I've done is sort of written up a little list of some of the major changes that I can note in my own behavior and personality, and maybe some of the other things that have been mentioned by others. So let's just go through those. The first topic that I want to talk about regarding major shifts in my personality since taking psilocybin for the last 4 or 5 years is love for the divine individual. What does this phrase to me mean? Why does it sound so dramatic? Well, to me, what that sentence means is that essentially my compassion and my empathy has increased dramatically since taking psychedelics. The divine individual to me is the recognition that I feel I've come to on psychedelic trips that behind all the layers of words and language and self-identification, there is this root similarity of self-awareness. And some people, I'm sure, call that the soul. Some people call that, the seat of the psyche. I don't know. But there is this base element that we all share that is related to our self-subjectivity. That gives me a lot of empathy for others, because I think the ego complex that we all carry around in our mind naturally picks apart and gives you reasons to not care about others. It gives you excuses and sometimes maybe even valid reasons to not see the ultimate divinity in others. Psychedelics have basically thrown into my face that this locus of consciousness that I am, as remarkable as I may think it is replicated outward billions of times on this planet, and it's just as marvelous each time. There's no hierarchy to existence. There is just existence. And this gives me a feeling of relatedness to everything that experiences. What I suppose I'm trying to get at is that the recognition of the fundamental sameness that I have with others has really cemented into me because of my psychedelic practice. And the consequences of this are that I'm a more compassionate person. That's not to say I'm more compassionate than even the average person. I think we all have our own journeys and our own levels of mood regulation and things like that. So what is this like in my daily life? Is this that I'm just some type of love guru going around being understanding and compassionate all the time? No. But I do feel like it's made me more patient with people. And everybody, of course, has their own, relative scale for empathy and compassion based on what you've always been. And I can just say that based on my own metrics, based on who I was before I started taking psychedelics somewhat regularly and who I am now, I'm a much more understanding and compassionate person. The next big personality shift that I definitely must talk about because I find it hilarious is what I'm going to call the Caveman Brain-Swap. Now, the Caveman Brain-Swap originates on my first mushroom trip. If you're a very original viewer of this channel, I have a video where I talk about my first mushroom trip ever. That's for another day. Suffice it to say that my first mushroom trip, I was shot back into 10,000 BC, more or less. And what I mean by that is that the feelings and the thoughts and the sensations that I had on that experience were very primitive feeling and very, I guess you could just say, profound and archetypal. The Caveman Brain-Swap is definitely one of my favorite aspects of me getting further and further into mushrooms because it's probably unbearable to some people. It's the most cliche masculine guy thing to do in his 20s, triggered by psychedelics ever. I ask my family for hatchets and all kinds of materials so that I can hopefully forage my way through the woods on a camping trip, whether it's camping, fishing, archery. I've done pretty much everything in my power to do activities that feel like I'm reintegrating with the natural world around me. And this is a cliche for a great reason. Because it feels great. Because when you actually start to do these things, you feel more grounded and more connected. And all of that is just to get this sense, or maybe like a glimpse of a sense, that I am maybe even 1/10 of 1% mimicking an ancient role of an ancestor. You guys have to promise to warn me if I ever become a dendrophile. Now, I had to look up the term dendrophile because apparently it's somebody who loves trees a little too much, if you know what I mean. So if I start talking about trees too much in these videos, I really need you guys to give me a heads up. Like, Quentin, you're getting a little flirty with the trees. You know, we can talk about the sacred geometry and the mosaics and yada, 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 but Quentin, we can't have you flirting with these trees. Hey, join the damn Discord, a friendly community of 10,000 psychonauts. Link in the description below. I think you're going to love it. Another notable personality shift is pretty much the complete loss of any antagonism towards religions. Don't get me wrong, I still deeply, fundamentally disagree with dogmatic and extremist religions, especially those that have notoriously brought harm to other people and continue to do so. But this antagonism, this sense that I am superior because I understand the material world and I understand that there's no mystery or no magic to it, that obnoxiousness is completely gone. Because basically, you know, after you're thrown into the complexity pool a couple times, you realize that we're just building, you know, fumbling knowledge structures to, you know, describe the infinite. And while we have very powerful tools today that have tremendous prediction capability, there are many, many aspects to this realm and experience itself that have not been explained. And I don't put any, weight behind any of these religious claims in particular, but it would be a fool's decision to think that this attempt to reconcile consciousness with the universe it seems to be embedded in is naive or childish. Science can explain the relationship between the mind and consciousness. It can explain every aspect that may seem to shut it off from our perspective or to stimulate it in multiple ways. But science has still yet to explain why fundamental material laws give rise to self-subjectivity. Why, in other words, a dead universe made of inanimate matter assembles into units that are sentient. And many scientists believe that this is just another question that science is ultimately going to answer. I do not. I believe that self-subjectivity is going to be the fundamental roadblock between a materialist understanding and a complete picture of what is going on here. Another shift worth noting is that I now take myself much, much less seriously. I have written down here that my mental outlook is no longer nearly as grim or as cynical. I have a lightheartedness and a humor even under extreme duress. And, don't get me wrong, I'm not some guy who's going to be like, if my car, breaks or like blows up or something like that. But under, you might say pretty stressful situations, I am able to remember that we are basking in the sea of who knows what, and that my concerns are so trivial. It's so absurd. And I believe it's the French philosopher, if I'm correct, Albert Camus, who has this notion of absurdism, this notion that our very existence is a contradiction and extremely absurd. And his thesis was sort of that we should accept this directly and just kind of live this way. And I agree. I find life hilarious. It seems that if you don't lose the plot, if you don't forget that, it's hard to take yourself that seriously. This might not be good. If you're going into a career in law enforcement, it might not be the best thing to doubt your authority in every single moment. Or maybe it would. But I know there's plenty of careers where this wouldn't be advantageous. And I can say firsthand, completing a school assignment, I can see how people who go too far down the rabbit hole all of a sudden just can't keep doing academia or can't keep continuing in school. It almost seems like we are losing the plot here. Why exactly am I doing these repetitive calculations from a dusty textbook that don't pertain to actual matters and problems that I want to solve when I'm going to fade into oblivion? So there's this absurdism and hilariousness to all kinds of provocative situations that I might get myself into. One major shift that I think psilocybin is directly responsible for is the complete evisceration of any sense of nihilism, or I suppose I should just say meaninglessness, that I may have felt. Any feelings that naturally arise from somebody who considers themselves skeptical, that might be anxiety provoking or, existential, those fears I don't feel nearly as strongly. So, why is that? Well, I have written down here to remind myself that I was a pretty extreme skeptic. I really found a lot of joy in applying basic scientific concepts to debunk ideas that might seem mystical or spiritual, or give life any type of a romantic tinge outside of what the physical phenomena actually was. People like that, or I should say, like me, can sometimes naturally lead themselves to a place of a lot of suffering, because the inevitable conclusion of purely seeing yourself as, a deterministic bag of neurons can be really anxiety provoking. You get the comfort of thinking that you're accepting the grim reality that is, but that doesn't really get you much more than that. And so, several confrontations with a mystical landscape pretty much wiped this out for me. I think what I needed was an encounter with a mystical experience, and I was really lacking that while I was dismissing them. I was very much under the impression that consciousness was essentially a byproduct of an evolutionary process that sort of just snapped into being one day, and that life really was nothing more than a chemical reaction that began, several billion years ago and continues to do so today. And in one vein, that's completely true, and that's the problem. The problem is when you take this very strict way of viewing the world in material mechanism and particles and, the things you can touch. The problem is you cut out the complete other aspect. But the funny thing is that it's right there in front of you. Psilocybin showed me that I was missing the phenomenon that was right there in front of me the entire time. And that phenomenon was the solution to my feelings of nihilism as a consequence of being skeptical. And that it was that there is this irreducible mystery of existence, of self subjectivity, the hard problem of consciousness, this fact that inactive matter gave rise to you, who's watching this video right now, that fact. And that fact, all of a sudden, on my psilocybin trips, became coded and coded in meaning. There's this missing element to anybody who thinks that the world is pointless and that really there's no reason to do anything whatsoever. And that's that you're here right now to say that. How strange, right? If everything is so completely pointless and there's no reason that anything should really even occur whatsoever, first, this will never be answered, but first, why does anything occur? And second, why do things occur within that system that are a part of that system and know they exist? That to me is the wedge in the door between all of science and religion. Psilocybin really gave me a feeling sort of like fatalism, and I don't want to say fatalism because that's too determinate and I feel doesn't leave room for other things, but it gave me this feeling of cosmic order, that even though it is completely impossible for me to fully understand the picture of existence that we live in, there is something to it. There are attributes that might have a symmetry or an order that we might have to have a faith, you may say, in. It has become clear to me that consciousness is of infinite value in this universe. It is either all there is, and it is projecting a physical world that does not actually exist, or it is the most valuable, rare commodity that exists in this vast, dead universe. Either one of those possibilities I find deeply meaningful and inspiring. I think that's going to bring an end to my video talking about some of the more major personality shifts that I've noticed within myself after taking psilocybin for several years. If you have any similarities or differences for me, I'd love to hear them in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, well, it is time for the night mode edition of the Patreon list reading. I just want to again thank each and every single one of my patrons for your support. Because of you guys, I'm actually able to somewhat survive in this YouTube adpocalypse environment that we live in. Thank you so much to each and every single one of you. And now to read your names. Adam Sornat, Alex Miser, Alpha Disconnect, Anti Miko Makinen, Ashcore Draxon, Blue Thought, Caleb Talaxon, Chicks, Chris Filleon, Connor Nelson, The Happy Hour Show, Danny Cameron, David Vincent, Dendare Lotus, Devin Hall, Damian Scoose, Eric Sear, Fishy, Jedimanos, Gray, Helvetia, Illusion, Irate Llama, Jack Donahue, Jake Hall, Jason Barnes, John Fisher, Jonathan, Justin Boudreau, Karenda, Kelvin, King Ragnar, Lassie, Leron, Lithium Blodwyn, Louis Le Louis, Lynn A. Norton, Mator, Matthew Haddad, Miguel Navarro, Mike King, Mike Wazowski, Mohiyidine Cheikh, Morty, Nathan Martins, Nathan Milbrandt, Ohram Mcleod, Ovenwant Kenobi, Pitkoob, Professor, Rainbow, Rakaya, Robbie, Royan, Ryan Allen, Serap Chapagain, Sebastian, Secular Shaman, Shusty Rackleford, Sierra Butler, Silver the Hedgehog, Serena, Steven, Taplast, Tatum Scott, 3-Pounder, Tiark Tomarlin, Toxic Player, Turtle Toast, Voyager, Xavier Riviera, Zachary David, and Zebediah. Thank you all so much. This would be impossible without you. Until next time.